Wealth is a funny thing. Ultimately, it can mean different things to different people, but in general, there is sort of a socially recognized threshold of what wealth is. In the grand scheme of things, most people in Western civilization are incredibly wealthy relative to the rest of the world. In fact, if you make $34,000 or more, you're considered in the top 1% globally. However, in places like the US, $34,000 doesn't take you very far. So what is wealth? And is it possible that wealth is more than just money? I want you to imagine something with me for a second. Imagine it's 1965. You wake up, hop out of bed, eat some breakfast, and then head out the door. The sun's shining, it's a beautiful summer day, the birds are chirping, the white picket fence that you painted over the weekend is glistening in the sun. You get into your Pontiac GTO and head to work. You're in meetings all day, going over budget proposals, and then 5 o'clock rolls around. So you hurry out of work to make it to your son's baseball game. He wins the game, so you take the whole family out to dinner and ice cream. It was not too long ago that this was the standard. Believe it or not, this is what wealth looked like in America. It wasn't extravagant, flashy, or luxurious, but it was achievable, and more importantly, it was meaningful. However, recently, within the last decade in particular, the standardized idea of wealth, that threshold, has completely changed. And for the worse, I might add. In today's video, I want to discuss what wealth looks like in the 21st century and compare that to what it should look like and why this misconception is so dangerous for society. In today's world, when you think of the word millionaire, typically you think of fast cars, nice homes, luxury watches, designer clothes, and I think that's largely due to social media. Whenever you go onto social media, you see people living extravagant lifestyles, going on luxury vacations, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. However, in my view, the problem lies in that 20 plus years ago, that idea of wealth was the exception. It may be a goal, and a fine goal to have at that, but nonetheless, it was an exception. And again, I think social media is to blame for this, and here's a great way to understand it. 20 plus years ago, if you were to ask someone if they have a personal relationship with any multi-millionaires, 9 times out of 10, they would say no. Most people did not personally know anyone who was a multi-millionaire. Now, if you ask the same question to the average person today, the answer would still be no. The average person does not have a personal relationship with anyone who lives in $10 million homes, drives all the supercars, and wears designer brands all the time. They just don't. Yet, because of social media, it feels like we do. It seems as though more people have that kind of wealth than actually do. The simple reason for this is that 99% of the population is consuming content from 1% of the population. And it's understandable. No one wants to see a day in the life of someone driving their '99 Honda Civic to work at McDonald's, because that's not the goal. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with that. All of that's part of the grind, but no one wants to see the grind. Everyone wants to see the success. Everyone wants to see the Lamborghinis and the vacations in the Maldives because that's the goal. That's what everyone's striving for. However, because that's all we consume, the 1% producing content for the 99%, we've begun to view that as the standard as opposed to the exception. In fact, here's a crazy statistic for you. Roughly 2% of children are deaf. How many children do you personally know that are deaf? Do you even know sign language? You probably should, because you're twice as likely to know a deaf child than you are to know someone with that kind of wealth. Now, there's nothing wrong with dreaming big and setting that as the goal. I'm not here to try to crush anyone's dreams. However, when we set that as the standard, we're setting ourselves up for failure because anything less than that feels like we've failed. Have you ever heard of the phrase, shoot for the stars, but aim for the moon? I love that because it really helps to put this into perspective. I feel like so many people set goals without first considering what it would mean to fall short. Now, understand, falling short isn't failure, it's just not achieving that exception. And also, as we'll get into, the financial aspect is just one area of wealth. This is why it's not uncommon to see ultra wealthy people who are dissatisfied with their lives. I can't quite remember who it was, but at one point I heard someone talking about people who say, well, even if money doesn't make you happy, I'd rather cry in a Ferrari than a Prius. And he took a different perspective that I hadn't heard before. He said, if you're crying in a Prius, it's because you don't have a Ferrari. But if you're crying in a Ferrari, it's because you truly are unhappy. So wealth isn't just about money, it's about much more than that. So how do we apply this shoot for the stars but aim for the moon mentality when it comes to wealth in today's world? I think it starts with our perception of goals. Think about Apollo 11, the US's first successful attempt to put man on the moon. There were dozens of failed attempts leading up to that successful mission. In all of those attempts, they were not shooting for the stars and aiming for the moon. No. They were shooting for the moon and aiming for orbit. The ultimate goal was landing on the moon, but that was the exception. The standard and what they were aiming for was just to get into orbit. It would have been unrealistic of them to set the standard as landing on the moon because that hadn't been done before. When we apply this to our views of wealth, it's unrealistic of us to expect the 1% to be the standard as opposed to the exception. That's what we're shooting for, sure, the 1%. We're shooting for that, but we need to be aiming for something a bit more realistic. That way, in the off chance that we don't achieve that 1%, what we're shooting for, we still can achieve what we're aiming for. Dream big, work hard, but don't let social media fool you into thinking that multiple millions of dollars is the standard. Is it achievable? Absolutely, but there's more to wealth than just money. So take some time to think about what wealth means to you in today's world. And on that note, as always, please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.